Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, From Oracle Forms to APEX, How to Quickly and Easily Modernize Your Forms Applications. My name is Carter Looney. I'm the president of Prince America, and I'm going to be your moderator today. As a lot of us know, Forms has grown over the years to become a viable enterprise, a platform for enterprise applications. More and more, we're getting requests to move Forms to APEX, especially over the last year or so. So that's basically why we came up with this webinar, and we see a lot of interest in moving that direction. One thing I want to tell you guys before we get too far into this is if you have any questions at all, just go into the chat. We have experts waiting to help you get answers. And either if we don't get them within the webinar, we can do it per email or per telephone afterwards. So, what are we going to address today? Obviously, what are the advantages of using APEX as an alternative to Oracle Forms? Why does even Oracle say it's the natural successor? How do Forms to APEX migration work, and which tools and what knowledge do you need to make it successful? Lastly, how can we use modern cloud and project management solutions to speed up the process and minimize costs? So before we get started with the presenters, I'm going to do the first question versus poll, and there you go. Are you guys looking to move away from Forms? Okay, I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds. Looks like most everybody's got it. Okay, I'm going to stop the polling now. Last chance. So, as you can see from the poll, there's a lot of you are looking for a new platform, moving away from Forms. Very interesting. So let's move on. We have two speakers today. David Peak is the Oracle APEX product manager. He's been with Oracle for more than 25 years, and more than half that time he's been the product manager for APEX. Probably more than anybody else around, he shaped what APEX is. On the other side, we have Christian Piasecki. He's our head of consulting. He's a Scrum Master and does project management, and has a lot of experience in doing this kind of upgrade or kind of modernization. So I'm going to go into the second poll. See if you guys, have you decided that you want to, there we go, I've started it. Okay, I'm going to stop the polling here in about 5 more seconds. All right, last chance. So this is also very interesting. Almost a third of you are saying that you're going to stay on forms, but 2/3 of you are looking for some kind of alternative. Interesting. Okay, so let's get into the presentations. So I want you guys to welcome David Peak. As I said, he's the product manager for Oracle, and he's going to give us some ideas of what Apex can do, what the future path is, and talk a little bit about forms as well. There you go, David.
Thanks, Carter. I'm sharing my screen now. Let me just get the Q&A and the chat out of the window. And I'm just going to give a very short presentation today, which I need to give my safe harbor statement. Basically, anything I say can't be used to make purchasing decisions and so forth. So, in a nutshell, what is Oracle Apex? It's a low-code development platform that enables you to build scalable and secure enterprise apps with world-class features that can be deployed anywhere. So some of the key things in there is the scalability, the security, the fact that you can readily build enterprise applications. When we're talking about Oracle Forms, many of these applications are very large. They're certainly mission critical. They need to be performant because of the fact that they're used by large numbers of users and so forth. Apex itself is is a database-centric web application development framework, much like Forms. So primarily what you're doing is you're building applications on top of database objects rather than doing a UI first type of design where you start from the screens and build down, and the database is almost the last consideration or considered a black box at the bottom of the heap. Instead, with Apex, much like with Forms, then you're building from those database objects up to build both desktop and, very importantly, mobile web applications. So to build a mobile application, you don't need to do anything special. The applications that you build with Apex out of the box are fully responsive and will work on any device, whether it be a desktop, a tablet, or a mobile phone. Apex, much like Forms, is used to visualize and maintain database data, and also it's used to leverage your SQL skills and all the capabilities within the Oracle database. So some of the distinguishing characteristics is we have an advanced IDE, which you actually run through a web browser. So for development, it's purely browser-based. You don't need any client software. Also for your end users, all you need to do is send them the URL for your application, and they need their user credentials, and off they go. They don't need any client software at all. So that's quite a distinguishing characteristic between Apex and Forms. When you're defining applications within Apex, then you're actually defining metadata, and all of that metadata is stored inside the Oracle database. And at runtime, it's actually dynamically reading that metadata and producing the pages that you've defined. So we don't do any code generation, and you don't have to generate the in Forms land where you generate the FMB to create the FMX. You don't need to do any of that. And that makes it very quick to be able to test and iterate your applications, because of the fact as soon as you save the change, you can run the application immediately, see the results, see whether you need to make a change or not, go back to development, make another change, save it, run it, and just continues around that loop. With Apex, all of your processing is done in the database, where the application definitions are stored and where it's accessing the local data systems. And so it's a very performant way to build data intensive applications. Apex is a no-cost feature of the Oracle database, and it's also fully supported. So with your Oracle database maintenance agreement, we also have it also includes support for Oracle Apex, and in fact there's a dedicated support team within Oracle support that'll handle all of your Apex questions. You can run Apex on any database, supported database from 11GR2 and above, and all editions of the database from XE all the way up to Enterprise Edition. So for installing on-premise, simply go to apex.oracle.com/OTN, and then you can download our latest version. Apex is also included in the Autonomous database, and it's also included with the new Always Free service. So for anybody that wants to go and kick the tires, then simply go to www.oracle.com, click on the button in the top right to go to the free cloud trial, and then you can get up and running within minutes and start utilizing Apex. Talking a little bit more about Autonomous, there's two flavors of Autonomous database. There's the OLTP, which is ATP, or Autonomous Transaction Processing, and then our analytics version, which is Autonomous Data Warehouse, or ADW. Both of these are fully managed and also include Apex already configured and installed and ready to run at no additional cost. The key thing here is for developers is they don't have to worry about whether the database is up, whether everything's installed. They don't have to worry about any of that. Instead, their primary concern is on developing applications. So a very quick look at the architecture for Apex. A browser talks through a middle tier, which is Oracle REST Data Services, and that proxies a request across to the database. Now with Oracle REST Data Services, or ORDS, that can be installed into a WebLogic server, also into a standalone Jetty server or Apache Tomcat. Importantly, none of the application logic is actually performed in the mid-tier. It's all performed in the database. And within the database itself, we have the Apex engine, which is just a schema for the engine, which consists of large amounts of PL SQL and a large number of tables to hold all the metadata. And then we have your data schemas and, of course, all the other components within the Oracle database. With Apex, we can also utilize external data sources. So for example, we can utilize REST-enabled SQL to talk to other databases using ORDS, and that's a very performant way to be able to perform any SQL functions on a remote database. Alternatively, you can also define web sources, which can either be REST or SOAP, and these allow you to utilize REST APIs from other systems and build reports, forms, charts, etc. on top of those. You can also utilize database links, however, it's not nearly as performant as using REST-enabled SQL or web sources. So next, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the key new features that we've introduced in Apex 19.2, which was released just a week or two ago. So the first one is faceted search, and I'll give you a very quick demonstration of that. It's a really great feature that will allow your end users to really be able to analyze their data in ways they've never dreamed of before. We've got enhanced shared list of values so that we can, it's easier for especially new developers to define a list of values. They can do it declaratively rather than having to put in a SQL snippet. We've enhanced also the pop-up list of values so that you can have multiple columns being displayed, multiple columns returned, and so forth. We've completely redesigned team development to basically be be designed around issues. Then we've got the interactive grid. We've actually REST enabled that component, which is new for 19.2. With the data loading that we introduced, we've actually extended that out now to also cover existing tables. We've also done improvements in the SQL workshop, it's universal theme, and we've updated Oracle Jet and the jQuery libraries. So very quickly on faceted search, it's much like you would see on many web pages. For example, if you're searching for a car on a site like cars.com, you'll see these facets down the side whereby you can go and select, particular facets, and based on those narrow down the results to the sort of, in this case, the houses you might want to rent or the car you might want to buy, etc. With the enhanced shared list of values, then you can also, they can also be REST enabled and web sources, support multiple columns, and as I said earlier, the declarative column mapping is very useful for new developers in particular. One of my favorite features is this enhanced pop-up list of values, so that you can actually see more than just one column. Makes it a much more robust component. So I'm just going to quickly jump over and to my browser, if I escape out of here. And just very quickly, if I go into my workspace here, I'm going to go into the SQL workshop, object browser, and I've got quite a number of tables in here. I want one of the ones with sample. If I go to sample project tasks, you'll see that there's a few new tabs along here. For example, there's statistics. And this is telling me how many distinct values there are for the records in this table. And so I can see that there's 125 records. I've also got some sample queries up here. So if I wanted to, come on now, being a bit slow to respond. There we go. I can use these for building different components. But if I go back to table, there's also a new button in here, which is Create App. And what I'm going to do is just create an application directly off this table. And this is very useful, for example, if you're migrating from Forms to Apex and you want to build out some maintenance tables for some of your base tables, then this is a way that you can do it, in 30 seconds or so. So very few steps, just a couple of clicks, and now I have an application running. And I'll just log in. It produces a dashboard based on different criteria. You can see assignees, costs, is it complete, and who it was created by. But the nice one here is this faceted search. And you'll see that we've got project, assignee, costs, milestones, and so forth. And if I actually select one of these, then you'll see that it's actually changing all these values here as well. So, you can see that each of these different facets is being changed immediately once I select one other one. So very, very, very powerful capability. To be able to build this manually would take you months and months. Instead, you can now build it within 30 seconds or so. So going back to my presentation now, what I'd like to do is talk to you a bit more about Oracle Forms and why you'd want to modernize from Forms to Apex. So some of the key reasons is that you need a modern, responsive user interface. So with Oracle Forms, especially the older versions of Forms, then they're generally non-intuitive. They're very hard for new users to understand how to utilize the forms. Users today are not comfortable using function keys and that sort of thing. And so it can be difficult for people coming into an organization to understand exactly how to navigate around forms, and it takes them quite some time to become power users. Another key use case is if you need solutions for customers or partners. So you really need to have a very good looking, responsive, easy to use application for non-internal people, and so that might be another good reason. So many of the forms applications originally were designed for back office. So for things like data entry operators to be able to put in lots of data in a hurry. However, these days, many of those functions are being done by people throughout the organization. As such, you need to make sure that the applications are suitable for anybody in the organization to be able to use without needing to be trained. So that's really one of the key things is Oracle Forms is a great tool, but often the end users need to be trained in how to utilize it rather than just being able to log in and go, oh yes, I can understand what I need to do. And another reason that is with many of these applications, they're now 10, 15, 20 years old, and the business needs to do some major changes, and so the functionality needs to be redeveloped. Lastly, another key reason is unable to maintain or enhance existing Forms apps. So, many of the Forms developers are now getting older and have either been promoted or retiring, and so it's becoming more and more difficult to find new Forms developers. People coming out of college, for example, often aren't very excited to use Oracle Forms, even though it's a very powerful tool. It's considered old and not as sexy as the latest development tools, and so that can lead to issues with getting the domain experience and simply getting Forms resources. So now let's turn to Apex and look at some of the key similarities. So much like Forms, you're developing in SQL and PL/SQL. They're both database-centric development. They're both declarative. You can very easily integrate all of the Oracle database objects. So all of the packages, functions, procedures that you're currently utilizing, you can just as easily utilize them from Apex as you can from Forms. And also, much like Forms, you can fully utilize all of your database features. There are some differences. So Oracle Forms requires a full WebLogic server for the latest releases, whereas Apex requires Oracle REST Data Services, or ORDS, which can be run in WebLogic server, but can also be run in Apache Tomcat. And for development, the standalone Jetty server works excellently. With Forms, you need the browser plugin or Java Web Start. However, with Apex, you can just run it on any browser simply by entering in the URL. Oracle Forms generates files. Apex is metadata based, so you don't need to do the generation, which makes development iterations that much quicker and easier. Also makes deployment that much easier. Instead of having to deploy out to servers or out to clients, instead, everybody's coming to the server and getting the single source of truth of the applications directly from the metadata. And Forms, really is only suitable for desktops. When you design a Forms screen, you've got a set size. You basically, I've often seen many overcrowded Forms screens because of the fact that, you generally don't have scrolling or anything else on a Forms application. Quite the opposite is true with Apex applications. It runs on any device, and also you generally don't have more than one or two items on a particular line. Instead, you allow users to scroll on the page, and you allow the application, rather than being coordinate specific, you place items in a HTML grid, and that's why the applications can be responsive, is because of the fact you haven't specified an actual coordinate where each item is placed. With Forms, you can do styling with it, especially with the later versions. However, with Apex, it's very easy to do. We provide theming with various theme styles. We allow you to go and use what's called Theme Roller to change the color scheme very quickly and easily and see exactly how that works. Some of the key Apex advantages: you've already got an Oracle database, therefore there's no additional licensing costs. It's very easy to train up Forms developers. So I actually worked on a 4-year migration project for a law enforcement agency, and in that time, I probably trained up about 20 Forms developers. Most of them within about 2-3 weeks were becoming highly competent with Apex, and then within a month or so, then they were very productive using Apex and understood the differences. Of course, you can reuse all of your existing database objects, all of your tables, views, packages, and so forth. On that same project, we created a arrest system, and it took the law enforcement agency 2 years to train up all the police officers. So for 2 years, we had Forms and Apex running on the same database, updating the same underlying database objects until all of the police officers across all of the districts had been trained up in the new system. With Apex, it runs in any Oracle database, on premise or on cloud. And so that gives you a lot of flexibility on where you do your development and where you do your deployment. For example, you might develop an Apex application on premise, and then your application is designed for, say, your partners. Rather than exposing one of your own servers to the internet, instead sign up for the autonomous database and actually have Apex hosting the server, hosting the application for you, and then your partners simply log into that cloud service. Alternatively, you might be engaging with a partner, and you can readily come in and set up a cloud environment in a few minutes rather than having them come on premise, do the development out there, and then when it comes to deployment, you can either deploy it on the cloud or back on premise. The other key thing is that you're able to build very quickly, very clean, easy to use applications that your end users will love. And then we also have a very strong Apex community and a number of partners. With the Apex community, sorry, I copied this slide from my colleague Carsten, and I didn't realize it was in German. So I'm sure my friends from PITS can understand this. But we guesstimate the number of developers at about 400,000 to 500,000. To be honest, we're not 100% sure because of the fact one installation can have one developer or can have 100 developers. We see about 25,000 new installations a quarter, about 280,000 on-premise installations, and then every week we get about 2,500 signups for new new users on apex.oracle.com. There's also a number of Apex specific conferences. There's DOAG Apex Connect, which is in May, Apex World, which is in March, Apex Alpe Adria in April, and so forth. So just before I jump, I'm just going to quickly jump back over to my browser here. One thing I would like to do is just, if you go to apex.oracle.com, then we actually have under solutions, we have modernizing Oracle Forms. And if you prefer, if you go to the bottom of any of these pages, you can actually change this to German or any other language that we provide. But this gives you some more details on modernizing from Forms to Apex. And lastly, if we go to, I'm just going to go to the shortcut that I know here, apex.oracle.com, doc 192, which stands for the latest release, documentation for 192. You'll see this migrate applications. In here, there's a couple of key sections I want to point out. The first one is 2.4 here. This one is where we try and talk about the difference between Apex and Forms as far as pessimistic and opportunistic locking. We talk about user interface design and how you go about replicating the business logic. And then finally, down the bottom here in the appendix, then this is where we try and provide you with a breakdown on, different things. For example, what's a block in terms of Apex? It's a region in Apex, for example, and, details on each of these so that as a Forms developer, you can start understanding what we're talking about in Apex terms related to how you used to talk about it in Forms terms. And with that, I'll hand it back to who's going next? Carter?
Yeah, I will take it over. Thank you very much, David. Yeah?
Let me stop sharing.
Okay, super. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand this over now to Kristen Piasecki, who will be going through the presentation and live demo of the showing how forms can be really easily moved to Apex.
Okay, thank you, Carter, for introduction. Thank you, David, for showing us the capabilities of Apex and the possibilities how forms developers can start with Apex. Now I would like to show you how we from PITS make the modernization from Oracle Forms to Oracle Apex and what is our preferred way and process to get from the legacy forms to modern Apex application. So we have a common modernization process that we have designed for all our migration projects, not only for Forms to Apex, it's also designed for moving from reports to be a publisher. And this process has different stages that we took in the project. And we always start with the preparation stage. In this stage, our first step is to make an analysis. So we load all your forms and data and database data in our PITSCon repository and analyze your code structures, your FMBs, to get valid numbers how big a migration project will be. So we don't estimate it, we calculate the effort for a migration project. When we have this solid numbers, we make the next step. This step is a cleaning process. So we drop out old codes that is not more used because it's dead code. So maybe some developer says, I've written a lot of code, but it's uncommented, or program units that are not more used in the FMBs. We drop it all out to make the code cleaner because we don't want to move it in the new Apex world. We also get aware of redundancies. So we put similar objects together, similar queries to get cleaner code. After we have done this step, we move all the business logic from Forms to Apex. That is, not to Apex as a database. That is what David mentioned. You can reuse your PLS SQL code, all function and all procedures that are based in the database. You can use it in Apex. So that's our first stage. It's a very important stage to get your Forms application very clean. Before you start the second stage, it's automated migration. So we have a converter for this step. We decide with our customers how the architecture of the Apex application should like it. So when you start maybe with 500 forms, it's not a good approach to put it all in one application. So you have to cluster it in smaller applications and have to decide some architecture things like security, navigation bars, how should the UI load. So we made a lot of customer modifications in our converter. And after this is done, we call our converter and migrate the FMBs to Apex applications. That's an automated step with our PITSCon tool. And after we have migrated it to Oracle Apex application, it's pure Apex application, all declarative SQL files. We also generate Jira tasks and log files. Developers can look what tasks they have to do in the third stage, in the application fine-tuning, because there you have to do also some manual efforts, so like fine-tuning the application, redesign the business logic, redesign some change request, or maybe also enhancing the UI. After this fine-tuning is done, we are in the stage 4. It's a rollout. It's integrating the Apex application in the infrastructure of our customers and also test it. Yeah, you have to do the end-user test if the Apex application has all the functionality that you know of Forms, if everything is all right. And after you've done with this, your project is over. So that was a lot of theory, and now I want to show you some demos how we do this with our PITSCon tool. The steps that I have showed you in the slide, I want to show you in PITSCon. So our starting point is the FMB from our last project. It's a customer FMB where you can put some data inside, search for data, and we started with this FMB to move it to APEX. So let's start with the demo. I have to change the VLC. So maybe some of you know our PitsCon tool. It's based now in Oracle Forms, but we move it to APEX. The first step that you have to do is to load your FMBs into PitsCon. Yeah? In this step, we get all the metadata, all information out of the FMBs, put it in our repository, parse it, and it allows us to know how many dead code is inside, what business logic can be moved, and in the last step, we use all this informations out of the parsing to generate the APEX application. Like David mentioned, we make blocks, we make interactive grids out of the forms into APEX. So this is a parsing process, yeah. It took, you could load also menus, OLPs, libraries, everything in PitsCon and migrate it to APEX. After the parsing process is done, the second step is in the preparation, eliminating dead code. Yeah. We can search for objects and program units, items, columns that are not more used in the forms FMB. All these units we can drop out automatically out of the forms. So in this FMB, we have found 2 items, a program unit and an item in the FMB method addressing that is not more used. So it's the procedure X message to get sure to show you that is really dead code. I've opened the forms builder and search in the forms builder for X message, and we see that it's only one procedure, but it's never called in this FMB, so you can drop it out before you move to APEX. And we're also searching for the column Adresse zählen. It will be also only one time in the forms builder. You don't will find it a second time. After we have cleaned up the dead code, the third step is to move the business logic from the forms into the database to reuse it, your PL/SQL code, because you have invested a lot of time to write it, and the logic, the business logic, and we want to save this effort for the APEX project. So we have a tool, you can search in PitsCon for program units, for triggers, for procedures, for functions, and you can move it with one click to database packages. You can decide a naming convention that works for you, in which package you want to move it, and then you can reuse it after that in the APEX application. So we see in this screenshot that you get a package header, you get also a package body with a PL/SQL code, and you have to compile it in the database and you can reuse it. After this preparation is done, we go forward to the migration. With the APEX assistant, we select the FMB. It's Forms2APEX prepared. We are supporting APEX version 18 and 19 for the migration. We click on the generate button, and in this step, we generate the APEX application, the APEX SQL file that can be imported in the next step into the Oracle application builder to reuse. In this step, we also create a log file where you can see which items were converted to which APEX items. We can generate JIRA tickets in this step so that you have a workload for your developers. Yeah. So you see what warnings you get, what you have to rework in the APEX development tool. So, okay, that's the APEX application. What was generated. And when we select it, we have a save button, and we can generate this Apex SQL script. And when we have generated this script, the last step is to import it in the Oracle Apex environment. We select the SQL file, we click on import, and on next, we have to select the right schema that we want to use, the application ID, click on install application. It took very shortly, we click on next, install, run application. We have to log in, and we have a running Apex application with a second log where you can see which object were converted, which object you have to adjust manually, and a list of which objects are not converted because you have some object like graphics or alerts which are not supported basically in Apex. So you got a list of warnings. So maybe when you don't have primary keys defined in forms, but you want some master detail relationships to use in Apex. So we have a no primary key item. So our page is not running. Okay, we have the Apex developer has to go in the page. That's a fine tuning, and has to edit the application. You must select the right column. So it's okay, that's the primary column. We click, select it, save it, click on run, and we have a running Apex application with master detail blocks. And now you can network your Apex developers on it to make the fine tuning, maybe some rearrangement of business logic, rearrangement of buttons, navigation. So that's a manual effort that we calculate in our analysis. And at the end, we have a finished application at customer side where you have a single row view on the top with master detail. What wasn't possible in Apex 4, but gets working in Apex 5.1. Was a big enhancement for Forms customers. Okay, so that was a short demo how we do it, the modernization process with Pitscon and with Apex. And now I want to go ahead with some slides. What we have customer projects, and I want to with some numbers because that's the most important for our customers. How long took a project for me, and what cost reduce of efforts and costs will I have when I use Pitscon for the migration? It's out of our last customer project, the customer had about 180,000 lines of code. We calculated, you can look it up in Wikipedia. A normal developer can write about 100 lines of code per day that he understands. So customer would take about 9 person-years to write the application from scratch. When we migrated with Pitscon, with Forms2APEX, without the preparation, it will took us 6 years. But you have a lot of saving when you do the preparation. So when we do the preparation, we come from 6 years under 3 years. So you have saving about 70% with you making the preparation and using the Pitscon tool. Yeah. Some other points that our customers liked in our project, that we make the project depending on the customer team and know-how that the customer is. So we can make complete migration projects as full service. We can migrate only some clusters. We can make only the preparation and migration for the customer, or we can do the projects together. So we have some Apex experts, Pitscon experts that can make a training, mentoring for your developers and getting started with Apex and using Pitscon. Some technical view on the technologies that we use for our Apex project. We use a lot of state-of-the-art tools and technologies. So we use the use Apex versions. We use Jira for bug tracking and project management. We have a Git and Subversion integration in Pitscon for loading objects. Yeah? And we use Slack for team communication with customers, with internal teams. And starting a few months ago, we use the Oracle Cloud for running Pitscon, because it's a very performant infrastructure and system for us, which is ready to use from day one. So the customer don't need any own infrastructure for running Pitscon, and you have no costs for Pitscon project licenses. Okay, so that was the demo from my side, a lot of slides. Carter, would you like to take over for the last part?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you very much, Christian. So I will do that. Let me share my screen again.
Yeah, give me one. I will stop sharing. Okay.
Okay. So this always takes a second with me. I don't know why, but there we go. And I will make it big again. Okay, there we go. So we're going to go into the last of our polling questions. Yeah. What are you looking to achieve with your migration? And I'm launching the polling now. For some reason, I have the feeling that we're not. Ah, there we go. Okay, well, I'm going to go for another 10 seconds. All right. I'm ending it. Last chance. So here's the results. Quite a few people are looking for maintainability, the quality of the new applications over time. Rest, speed, of course. Yeah, minimal use of ROISs and budget are as expected, probably, right? Especially budget is right up there. You can see the polls later. I'm going to stop this now. And we're going to move on. Internal advertising here. As you may know, it's been living in the forms world for 20 years. We know it really well. We have excellent tools to help you guys migrate and services to people to do it. I'm sure it can help you make it faster, save you money. Contact us if you have interest in doing that with us. That said, I'm going to come to the end before we do Q&A. And this is something that we decided as part of the webinar. We like to always offer the people to take the time to go through our webinar something special. And this time we're going to let you test it yourself. If you guys really want to see, you know, you say, well, we've seen the demo, all that kind of stuff, but you know, the proof's in the pudding. You want to do it yourself. Then we've set up a cloud environment where you can take a couple of your forms and migrate them using our tools, just to get a feeling of how things work. We'll work closely together with you guys to do that. The URL is down here at the bottom, forms2apex.com. we're also going to send an email out to everybody with the link to this, to where you can register to do this. It'd be really good to see some of you try that out, because I'm sure it's worth your time and trouble. We're only going to have it open for 48 hours, so get in there and get it done. All right, so what we're going to do now, actually, I messed up my slides. I can see this already. We're going to go into Q&A, which is right here. And I've taken 4 questions out. I mean, we're already answering Q&A in the session anyways, but I've taken 4 questions out, and I'd like the first 2 to be taken on by David, if he could, and the last 2 by Christian. If you could go for an answer with this. David, what does it look like? When will Apex have a PDF professional printing?
Well, I did put in my safe harbor statement, so I can talk a little bit about that. We are, there's an excellent option in Apex Office Print, which is what we've actually licensed for our internal services. But we are working on some capabilities to be built into Apex in coming releases. Okay,
that sounds good. Yeah, I mean, you know, we got to understand too. You got to be careful about what you say, but it's good to do that. So what about single sign-on? How does single sign-on work with Apex?
So, you know, Apex has built-in authentication schemes for single sign-on, LDAP, HTTP header variable authentication. We can even use social login. So we have a number of different authentication schemes built in. So it really depends on whether you're using it as a partner application or the primary, as to how much you need to configure to actually get SSO working. But generally, it's just a case of, with any of these, putting in the right parameters, and then it'll just work for you. So that's one of the great things about Apex, is we provide a lot of the plumbing. So as developers, you can concentrate on solving the business problems and, you know, replicating the forms functionality, rather than, you know, getting down into the weeds of, you know, how to do database interactions, how to do the security, the authentication, the authorizations, and so forth.
Okay, that's super. Okay, well, thank you very much, David. The next 2 questions we're going to ask our expert Christian on. Christian, where does the PLS, the PL SQL code triggers, program units, etc., where do they get placed?
As mentioned, we move it to the database. It's in the preparation step, but we have to take care that there are no forms built-in. So we have to put these forms built-ins out of it and move then the pure PL SQL code to the database.
Okay, so that, in other words, all the business logic then gets moved out of the forms themselves, right?
Right. Because you can reuse it when it's placed in the form, so we move it to the database to reuse it.
Okay, super. So yeah, the last question that we got up front was, I have a custom application made using 11G. Is it worth it to upgrade to 12C, or should we directly migrate to Apex?
A short no, because we can directly migrate from Oracle Forms 11G to Apex. We don't need a step to go on 12C. We can also migrate maybe from Forms 6 also to Apex.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so then I'm going to go into the Q&A. We still have some questions here. Yeah, good. One of them is on prices. Pricing we can get back to. Write us an email, and we can talk to you about pricing as far as that goes. Bob Hicks asked a question about MDI. Is there any way to do MDI style apps in Apex? Who wants to take that one on?
David, do you want to answer this question? I think it's...
Okay.
Oh, sorry. So multiple windows, pages open, apps in Apex. So we have got, you know, I think it was in 18.1, we introduced a feature which allows some of that to be utilized. Now, you know, one of the things is, we know with Oracle Forms that people like to open up lots of different windows to look at different things. One of the ways you can do that within Apex is we have some ways that programmatically you can allow end users to do that. The other one is to simply use different browsers. So what I normally do when I'm working is I'll have one open in Firefox, one open in Chrome, one open in Safari.
Okay. Thank you, David. So we're going to go on down to the next one. What about reports? It's sort of an open question.
I'll take that one. I was actually just about to type in. So included within Apex, we have the Oracle Jet data visualizations. The key thing is they're fully declarative like the rest of Apex. So all you need to do is specify the query for that particular chart, and then specify whether you want a bar, pie chart, area chart, line chart, whatever it is, and then just specify what columns, what label, what value, etc. And then Apex will do the rest for you. You can also extend out those visualizations using JavaScript and using the Jet cookbook to understand how to do that.
Okay, great. So the question, the next one was from Sean Huang. Where does ORDS fit in this picture? I think you answered that before because it's part of the stack, but maybe
Yep.
if you.
Sure. So basically, the requests that come from the browser go to ORDS, and ORDS then proxies that request through to the database, and that's where the Apex engine lives. So ORDS is responsible for taking in the call and then transforming that call to an Apex, to the Apex engine, and then passing across all the parameters. So if you have a look at any Apex application, you'll see that it has F*P equals. Well, that F is actually a call to a procedure in Apex, and then the P equals is all the parameters that we're sending over. And so that's how it knows what page, what application, what page, what session, what parameters are being sent in, and so forth. And then the results are basically provided by the Apex engine and sent back through ORDS to the browser.
Okay, great. So lastly, Alejandro again asked, is there any way to integrate Apex inside a form?
So from my perspective, you don't want to have a form page going to an Apex page going back to a form page or vice versa. Instead, you want to do complete functional areas. And so, for example, you might have a large application and you might have migrated across the, let's say, the billing section. Okay, so to do anything with billing, you go off and you do it in Apex. So from the forms menu, you can call out to Apex. Sorry, once. My apologies, couldn't hit the mute button in time. And similarly, from an Apex menu, you can call out to forms, but I wouldn't want to try and do direct integration between pages of one to pages of another. It's just, most functionality you should keep in one or the other, not try and do it in both.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So, Suzanne and Michelle, are there Apex classes?
So that's a great question. If you go to apex.oracle.com/HOLS, then that will actually take you to a page where there's lots of tutorials, and there's also, Oracle Education has courses, other consulting companies have courses, etc. But if you go to the HOLS page, then there's some good labs on there for you to get started with. Within the documentation, there's also a 2-day plus developers guide. I think it's called something different these days. But there is quite a bit of training online. I also recommend people going to apex.world, which is a site by the community for the community, which includes a Slack interface, and people ask questions on there about all sorts of, how do I do X, how do I do Y sort of questions, and experts from around the world help them to get through their issues.
Okay, super. So, of course, Michelle, you're welcome. And Bob, again, yeah, can you recommend any books? I think I've looked at this whole site too. Pretty a lot of information on there. A lot of it depends on how you learn. You're practical, real practical person. You can do a lot of hands-on stuff there. So that's great about.
Pretty honest with you,
What about
because we're
books?
coming out with a release every 6 months, then you know, book authors are having trouble getting books out in time. But there are some excellent books out there. They might be slightly dated, but the majority of the concepts are still very strong and still very applicable today.
Okay, good. So it doesn't look. Oh, Doc, we do have another one. Can you pass
So
before you talked about this a little bit before?
yeah, I would suggest you don't try and do that. That you don't try and go from Apex page to Forms page or from Forms page to an Apex page. You're better to do complete functional areas rather than trying to do a Forms page, calling an Apex page, which does a few things and then goes back to Forms to do some other things. Instead, do the whole functional area, right? And do it all in Apex or keep it on the other. Don't try and mix the two. I don't think it's a good way to go.
Sure, sure. So it looks like we're coming just about to the end of our question and Q&A. I want to thank everybody today for attending the webinar. I want to thank you in particular, David, for the time you've put into this. We really appreciate it. I'm sure the community appreciates it as well. Apex is a super powerful tool set, and I think it should be used more.
I couldn't agree more. Of course, I'm slightly biased, just a little.
Yeah. No, I mean, you see the alternatives out there. It really has not just a niche, but it has a really good place in enterprises to get things moving, get things done quickly, especially people that are moving from forms, because keep your skill set up, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and lets you move forward and actually evolve rather than do a completely big bang or revolution kind of situation. Yeah. Okay. So again, thank you everyone for your interest. Obviously, we're here to answer any questions you may have. You can contact us as you need through email, per phone. We are also going to send you at the end of this session. We're going to send you a link for anybody that wants to register to do the upgrade themselves. To test it out in the cloud, as well as a recording for the of this session. So again, thank you everybody, and I wish you a great day.
Bye together.
Bye.